Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Rime of the Ancient Mariner. We are now starting part 3. It is at this time that the story starts to really take a really cool turn, in my opinion. If you'll recall, the mariner shot the bird at the end of part 1. At first, the crewman got mad at him, which was all good if you're the South Pole Spirit. But then all of a sudden, they mistakenly thought that it was the bird that brought the fog and the mist. So then they cheered the mariner for killing this bird, said, "Nice job. It was the bird that brought the fog and mist. You killed the bird, so you got rid of the fog and the mist. You saved us. Nice job." And at this point, the South Pole Spirit was like, "Oh, I don't think so." And they started getting dragged to the line, to the equator, where they are left. Now, how do we know that it's the South Pole Spirit that has done this to them and is angry at them? Well, they had dreams. A bunch of them had the same dream, that the South Pole Spirit was below the ship and the South Pole Spirit was torturing them. So what did they do at that point to try to say it wasn't us, it was him? Of course, they hung the albatross around the neck of the ancient mariner to try to push the blame completely on him. Now, yes, he did kill the bird. It wasn't them, but they did cheer him for it, and that's why the South Pole Spirit is mad at them. So remember, they are stuck on the equator right now. This has been going on for days. They are running out of water. They are actually at the point now where they can't even speak because they're so parched. Their mouths and throats are so dry. They can't even talk to anybody. So they're in a world of pain. They're probably all going to die, but let's see what happens. And now we know the mariner's going to get through this somehow, because at the end, he's the one telling this story to the wedding guest, however many years later. All right, so let's go. Now, I'm going to point out one thing, and I I hope you can deal with this. I am going to be, let me just open something up real quick, make sure it's open. Good. I am going to be doing a little bit of artwork for you today. And remember, English teacher, not an artist. So my art is going to be very, very rudimentary at best, but it's a good way to see what's going to happen, because visually, I think it's easier to understand this if you can visualize it. So be prepared for my really bad artwork to happen momentarily. So let's go. Let's read part 3. They're past a weary time. Each throat was parched and glazed each eye. A weary time, how glazed each weary eye. When looking westward, I beheld something in the sky. So the ancient mariner beholds a sign in the elements far off. So remember, they don't have anything to look at. In fact, the only things around them in the water, it's another thing that they did wrong. And it was, by the way, the mariners as well as the ancient mariner who did this. Well, how else did they diss nature? It wasn't just shooting the bird. Remember, they were also dissing all the water snakes and water creatures that were around the ship, and they said, "Ew, it's slimy and ugly," and that also really angered the South Pole Spirit in a big way. So let's not forget they're also guilty in doing that as well. But he does. At this point, the mariner sees something way far away from them, and he's going to notice, as I read on, I'm just going to tell you this, that this speck starts coming closer to them. All right. At one point, he's going to say, he realizes, I'm just going to say it now, it's easier so I don't have to explain it then, that the shape, as it's getting bigger and coming closer to them, he notices that it tacks to them. Now, tacking is something that ships do. You guys are all starting to drive, guys and girls are all starting to drive right now, you're seniors. And you know that when you come up to a left turn, you go all the way up to the street before you turn into that street. That's not the way it works with ships. Ships, you have to start your turn very early, and then you slowly turn into the place that you're going to. You have to, in order to make a turn into like a riverway or something, you would have had to have started turning a long way back, and then you tack your way into that. And then eventually you'll be straight at the river, and then you push forward into it. That's called tacking. The fact that he sees something, a shape tacking towards them, means it's a ship coming towards them. But there's a problem. Why? Because if a ship is moving towards them from the distance, that means it's either being blown by a breeze, right? Which there is no breeze, because they too would be moving in the same direction, away from this ship, this shape, or the ship coming towards them. Or there would be oars, people rowing the boat, but they don't see oars coming off this ship. So how is it that a ship is coming towards them if they're not moving at all? So it must be some kind of supernatural ship. So it's like, oh, wait a minute. Holy crap, what's coming our way? Please listen. At first it seemed a little speck, and then it seemed a mist. It moved and moved and took at last a certain shape I wist. A speck, a mist, a shape I wist. And still it neared and neared, as if it had dodged a water sprite. It plunged and tacked and veered. So that's what tells us right now that there's a ship coming their way. But wait a minute, how is that ship moving, but we're not moving? We've got a problem. As it nears their approach, it seems like to be a ship. And at dear ransom, he frees his speech from his bonds of thirst. Remember, he can't speak right now. He can't even yell to his crewmates, look, a ship is coming, because they're so dry. Look what he does in order to regain his ability to speak, to add moisture to his body. Watch. With throats unslaked, with black lips baked, we could not laugh nor wail. Through utter drought, all dumb we stood. I bit my arm. I sucked the blood, and I cried, a sail, a sail. So in order to rehydrate himself, he bites into his own arm and he drinks his own blood, and then he's able to scream. And he screams, a sail, a sail, a ship is coming. I just want to point out, what must he look like to the mariners? He probably has this blood dripping down his face, coming down his chin from where he bit it. He probably looks very vampiric. Now, obviously, somebody drinking blood is a vampiric trait. Drinking your own blood, though, I don't know about that. But I could see how somebody could think that's vampiric. But let's continue on. With throats unslaked, with black lips baked, agape they heard me call. Gramercy, they for joy did grin. And all at once their breath drew in as they were drinking off. Now, this is weird. The minute the mariner drinks his own blood, all the other crewmen, all 200, also get the ability to speak. So it's as if they're living some kind of weird synonymous or some, I don't know what the word that I'm looking for. When you're working in sync, let's just go synchronized. They're working in some kind of synchronized mechanism. So what happens to the mariner also happens to them. I just want to point that out. That seems very weird. So now everybody has the ability to speak, and horror follows. For can it be a ship that comes onward without wind or sail or tide? And this is when they realize, wait a minute. First they're like, yay, a ship is coming, we're saved. And then they went, wait a minute. What type of ship comes without wind or wave? Oh no, it's some kind of ghost ship or something like that. So now they're starting to freak out. Their horror follows. Listen, see, I see. See, I cried, she tacks no more. Hither to work us wheel, without a breeze, without a tide, she steadies with upright keel. Now let me explain this. Actually, this is where the drawing comes in. So please bear with me. Allow me to present this. Hold on 1 second, please. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to pick blue to start, and we're going to draw my ocean. Now, I'm not going to draw any waves. Why not? Why? Because they're stuck. It's flat. That's as flat as I can make it. Sorry, everybody. There's no waves. There's no white caps. They are trapped there. Now, we're about to hear that this is happening during the day. And on the horizon, behind this shape that's coming towards them, is the sun. So let's make this red. So here goes the sun, and it's big, and it's bright, and it's red, right? So I can fill this in with red, fill this all in with red, so it's very red. But here's the problem. The ship that they said is, well, you know what, should I draw some? Yeah, let's make it like this. Let's make it a little more sunlight, right? We have the rays coming off. Looks almost like a flower, whatever. This is the sun, and it's very bright, and it's like you can't even look at it without going blind, correct? Seriously. Here comes the ship. So let's make the ship black. Now the ship comes between the sun and the mariner and the ship. So right now, the viewpoint that you're getting, that you're looking at this sun, is from the deck of the mariner ship, right? So here comes the other ship, and it floats right between them and the sun. What should happen when a big ship comes between the sun and you? What should happen? It should get what? It should get dark. Basically, there's a word for that. When the moon eclipses the sun, it gets dark. When anything, I mean, think about this. If you're sitting outside and you're sunbathing and your mother comes and stands between you and the sun, what happens? Your mom blocks out the light of the sun, and it gets very dark on you, and she gets this weird, ominous, dark appearance, and the sun kind of burns around the edges of her, right? So she eclipses the sun. That's what this ship should do right now. It should eclipse the sun. But here's the problem. It doesn't. What happens is when it pulls up, they realize, holy camole, This isn't a real ship at all. It's a ghost ship. It's a skeleton ship. In other words, it's made with bars, right? It's like the bones of a whale. By the way, that's how they build ships when they first do it. First, they frame it out and they put out little frames like this. But then, in order for the ship to sail, what do? They then fill in those blank spots by putting boards or wood or anything else so that water doesn't come into those holes. Here's the problem. This ship comes up to them, gets between them and the sun, but it doesn't block out the light of the sun. Instead, bars of light come through this skeleton ship. Basically, guys, it's a ghost ship. It's a skeleton ship. It's a ship that should not be floating because it has all these holes through it. Picture the bones of a whale. That's kind of what it looks like. So wait a minute. OMG. Not only is this ship moving without wind or waves, but it also shouldn't even be floating. It's a skeleton ship. But it gets worse. On top of the ship, on the deck, are only 2 people. One of them is somebody that everybody has heard of and nobody wants to meet. His name is Death. Death is on that ship, the Grim Reaper. So he's probably had his little sickle or scythe, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to draw it right there. It's in his hands, right? He's probably like, he's got this crazy look on, right? And then here's the other problem. If Death is on that ship, who's the other person on that ship? And why is Death and this other person coming to see us? Because remember, when Death comes to talk to you, you die. So now all these mariners, these 200 mariners and the ancient mariner, the captain, they're looking across at the water at a skeleton ship with Death and somebody else looking at them. And you're like, OMG. So let's stop sharing and let's go back to me. Now you can see me again. Hello. And let's continue reading. Now this should make a little bit more sense. Go. The western wave was all aflame, the day was well nigh done. Almost upon the western wave rested the broad bright sun, when that strange ship drove suddenly betwixt us and the sun. Now again, when that ship goes between them and the sun, it should get dark. It should eclipse the sunlight and they should be pushed into darkness. It seems but the skeleton of a ship. And straight the sun was flecked with bars, heaven's mother send us grace. As if through a dungeon grate he peered with broad and burning face. So wait a minute, why am I seeing the sun through this ship? That shouldn't be. And its ribs are seen as the bars in the face of the setting sun. Alas, thought I, and my heart beat loud, how fast she nears and nears. Are those her sails that glance in the sun like restless gossameres? I didn't draw this. This is kind of spooky as well. The ship has sails, right? But it's not regular sails. It's spider webs are its sails. Giant spider webs. Now, first of all, that freaks me out because are there giant spiders on that ship? That just freaks me out in general. Spiders kind of freak me out, but giant ones, forget about it. But think about this. If you had spider webs as your sails and the wind blew on your sails, would it move your ship? No, the wind would go right through the spider web. By the way, that's why spiders make their webs that way. They have the bars like that so that it can be out and the wind would pass right through it. If they had a full thing, first of all, flies and insects wouldn't be able to, they wouldn't think they could fly through the holes. They would see the sheet of something. They'd be like, I'm not flying. That wind. So wait a minute, check this out. You got a web sails serious through a grate, and is that woman all her crew? And is that Death? Are they two? Is Death that woman's mate? So they realize there's only 2 people on the ship. One is Death and one is Spectre Woman. From this point forward, we're gonna call her Zombie Queen. So you have Death and you have the undead queen up there, right? So think about this. If you have Death coming for you and the undead zombie queen coming for you, what does that mean? You're either going to be killed or turned into an undead creature in a minute. So these guys are totally in trouble. Listen. Allow me to turn my page. Her lips were red. Her locks were free. Her locks were yellow as gold. Her skin was as white as leprosy. The nightmare life in death was she, who thicks man's blood with cold. So at first they're like, oh, it's a beautiful woman. Then they realize, oh no, that's a dead woman up there. Pale skin, she's got the red lips. So we're going to call her Zombie Queen from now on. Death and life and death have diced for the ship's crew, and she winneth the ancient mariner. So listen, this is pretty interesting as well. When they pull up, they realize that these two, death and life in death, the Zombie Queen, are actually playing dice. Listen, the naked Hulk alongside came, and the twain were casting dice. The game is done. I've won, quoth she, and whistles thrice. So as they're coming up, they're playing dice, and right when they roll up next to them and don't block the sun out, we can see through the ship to the sun. You see these two, whatever, I don't call them people up there, these two creatures up there, and she screams, I've won, and she whistles 3 times. What did she win? No twilight within the courts of the sun. The sun's rings. All right, this is. I mean, I'm already freaked out if one of these guys. We've talked about it before. What makes a scary thing even scarier? Darkness. So remember, we're talking middle of the day, big bright sun right there, right? They block the sun, but don't block the sun. The minute she says, I've won, and whistles thrice, the sun disappears, drops below the horizon, and it becomes completely black again, darkness again. So the minute life and death, Zombie Queen says she wins, boom, it gets rushed back into darkness. Listen, the sun rings dip, the stars rush out. At one stride comes the dark. With far heard whisper over the sea, off shot the specter bark. So she says, I've won. The sun disappears, and the specter bark just shoots away. So that ghost ship just starts sailing away faster than fast. At the rising of the moon, we listened and looked sideways up. Fear at my heart as at a cup. My lifeblood seemed to sip. The stars were dim and thick the night. The steersman's face by his light gleamed white. From the sails the dew did drip, till clomb above the eastern bar the horned moon with one bright star within the nether tip. So the description is the sun goes down, and at the same time the moon comes up, and out comes the stars. So it gets spooky, right? One after another. One after one, by the star-dogged moon. Too quick for groan or sigh, each turned his face with a ghastly pang, and cursed me with his eye. So the mariner says at this point, that she says she's won. The darkness happens, right? It goes to dark, but then the moon comes up. So now we're in moonlight and starlight. He says, one after one, each of the 200 shipmen, my crew, turns to look at me and gives me the stink eye. They give me an evil look. I won't do it again. I know I'm not good at this, but I'm trying my best. His shipmates drop down dead. 4 times 50 living men, and I heard nor sigh nor groan. With heavy thump, a lifeless lump, they drop down one by one. So all of his men turn to him, give him the stink eye, the evil eye, and then they just die. They just drop down dead. They don't make a sound. They don't groan. They don't cry. They don't make any pain. They just die. Boom. Time out. Death and Zombie Queen were playing dice. She said, I've won. All the other men dropped down dead. So if she won, what did she win? Who did she win? Then who did death win? I'm getting the feeling now that she won the ancient mariner and death won the 200 men, right? By the way, who sent death and Zombie Queen, death and life and death lady? Who? The South Pole Spirit did, as a form of punishment for these guys. And I'm going to tell you right now, I've had this conversation with many a student. Gosh, is it fair that these guys were killed because they clapped the killing of a bird, or because they called those sea creatures ugly? If you're the South Pole Spirit, the answer is yep. That's what you get for messing with my birds. Now, me, I don't think that's equatable, but our authors want you to think that it's equatable. I think we're learning right now. What's the purpose of this poem? Don't be bad to nature. And if you are, something's going to come and get you in the form of spirits and God himself. Listen, this gets worse. So they all drop dead. But life and death begins her work on the ancient mariner. The souls did from their bodies fly. They fled to bliss or woe. This is This is cool. So he sees them all, give them the stink eye, and they all drop down. But then he watches their souls fly from their bodies. He watches like a ghost come out of each one of the bodies. And it says they fly to bliss or woe. What does that mean? You have 200 men. Some of them the souls fly up to heaven. Some of the souls fly down to hell. So I guess it depended upon if they were a good person or not. So their punishment isn't to be tortured forever. It was just to lose their life. But good men, I mean, they made a mistake in cheering for the bird being killed and calling them ugly. But people who live their life in a good way, they go to heaven. He sees them go to heaven. And the evil ones, they go down to hell. Interesting. Have you ever seen cartoons? I'm thinking of like Tom and Jerry, when Tom dies and like his cat ghosts, 9 of them start going up to heaven, and then he comes and he pulls them back down into his body because he doesn't want his life to end. That's what I see right now. I see these souls. It's just me. I'm crazy. I'm going to say it again. The souls did from their bodies fly. They fled to bliss or woe, and every soul it passed me by like the whiz of my crossbow. Interesting that he would mention the crossbow, because it's the crossbow that started all this. Although it's not fair. It's not the crossbow that killed the bird. It's the guy holding the crossbow that killed the bird. But I just want to say that's how fast, and he mentions the crossbow again just to remind you of why they're going through this, but that's how fast the souls shoot up or they shoot down. We are not done with this poem yet, because we still have to find out what's going to happen to the mariner, right? He still has some punishment for himself, for what he has done. Fabulous job, everybody. Have a great day.